Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Children. I hope you are safe and well. Now, it is a glorious heat wave here in the UK today, and I haven't put the fan on because I don't want to interrupt the sound when my guest here, Hadi Fares from DuPont Water Solutions, tells us all about the topic of today's conversation, which is the challenges within oligonucleotide purifications. So, Hadi, first of all, it's lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Well, apart from being very hot, I'm very, very well, actually. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Wilmington, Delaware, close to Philadelphia.
And what's the weather like in Philly at the moment?
We've had a couple of hot days actually, so it's probably close to where you are as well.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Now, um, the reason we're having this conversation is that you're actually co-hosting an upcoming webinar all about this particular topic. So, before we start talking about oligonucleotides and the challenges people have in terms of purification, for viewers not familiar with DuPont Life Sciences and Specialties, which is obviously the business unit you actually work for, can you tell viewers a bit more about that EU and the activities and solutions across life science and bioprocesses within it?
Yeah, absolutely. So DuPont Water Solutions deals with separations and purifications in various industries across the world. And obviously, water is in the name. So many of our colleagues in our team deal with its treatment to make it usable in areas that touch many aspects of our lives. But we also deal with purification and separation challenges in various industries. As you mentioned, life sciences is one of them. So I'm in a team specifically that focuses on the biotech and the biopharma industry. And one of the areas we focus on is purification of oligonucleotides and peptides, actually. And this is it's a very fast growing area of the biotech industry, and it deals with therapies made of nucleic acids like DNA and RNA.
Fine, brilliant. Now, let's go to a really basic question to start off, though. So, what is oligonucleotide purification, and why is it important?
Yeah. So oligonucleotides, as I mentioned, are short sequences of DNA and RNA.
Right.
And our cell machinery, which involves DNA and RNA, when it's sometimes defective, people have found ways of designing these short strands of RNA that can go into the cell or go into parts of the body and then target specifically those defective sequences and address genetic diseases that could deal with muscular atrophy or problems with the eye, for example.
Right.
Specifically to answer what is oligonucleotide purification, maybe I'll take a step back and just quickly mention how oligonucleotides are made.
Right.
So these molecules are made using a synthetic process. And basically, people make them on these resins, these spheres that basically they're like tiny spheres where the oligonucleotide, the nucleotide part, which is the subunit, is added step by step until we reach the sequence that we would like to reach. And then when the synthesis is over, when we have the oligonucleotide, you cleave it from the support. And now you have your oligonucleotide mixed with other reagents, maybe with some solvents that were in the solution.
Right. Okay.
And oligonucleotide purification really deals with removing these unwanted byproducts so that the
Right.
final oligonucleotide contains only the product that we want, and it's also safe to use for treatments. And again, the purification can go through different means, and we'll discuss some of these, as you mentioned in our webinar, and some of them focus on the chemical aspects of the oligonucleotide itself.
Right. And so, just hearing you say that, obviously, depending on the solvents you use and so on, I'm guessing there'll be different challenges out there. So, what are some of the challenges in terms of oligonucleotide purification?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, this is a synthesis. So as the reagents are being added, basically are going into this molecule, and many of these reagents used to build the oligonucleotide sequence, they look like the molecule, right? They're basically subunits of the molecule. So it's challenging sometimes to separate something that looks like your product.
Sure.
This requires good knowledge of separation technologies and also how to tweak these methods to obtain this pure product. Some other challenges include, for example, how fast you can purify these products, while at the same time still doing it efficiently. To speed up the process, for example, it's not always as simple as just speeding up the flow of solution in purification equipment, but also using the right resin, for example, and using the material that can purify higher amounts of the desired product. There's also challenges in optimizing the yield and the purity of the product, using the right buffers, and also optimizing the purification methods to deal with oligonucleotides that can be more complex than what the industry is used to. Sometimes they're longer sequences or more complex sequences.
Right, and you mentioned some of the ways people come. So what are some of the most common forms then that people use to overcome some of the challenges you just mentioned?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, usually it's done using purification resins, using chromatography. Now, maybe to connect this back to the oligos, so the oligonucleotides they're charged. They're basically sequences of RNA or DNA. They have a negative charge, but they also have a hydrophobic entity that comes from the synthesis. So people use purification strategies that rely on either the charge interaction or the hydrophobic interaction, depending on what they would like to sort of use as a handle to do this purification. And one of the most important decisions early on is what material to choose. Basically, what people do is they want to choose a material that absorbs the most oligonucleotides, because then they're saving on time, as well as being able to do this more efficiently, and also having a material that doesn't basically expire this fast, that has a good lifetime, so that you're not changing it very often. Again, as I mentioned before, people also focus on developing the best methods for the purification material. Since we mentioned the webinar, we'll be talking on a novel method that we developed in our lab, for example, to increase the yield of purification, to better take advantage of the material that we're using, the resin material, while not really tweaking a lot of other variables in this case.
Right. Okay. So it simplifies the process for them in many respects then.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now you talked about resin. So what options do they have then in terms of the resins they have, and what are the alternatives to what they can use?
Yeah. So again, because of it all goes back to the oligonucleotide nature of the molecule. It has certain handles we can use to purify it. So we've worked ourselves and others on different routes to basically use hydrophobic interactions. So there are different routes to do this. Some of these are in our previous webinars and in the upcoming one. So there are alternative ways there. And also, as I mentioned before, there's the ionic interaction there that could be used. And those are two routes that people could take advantage of. And there's a lot of development in the area from point of view of methodology as well as material optimization. And in choosing between the alternative, it's always important to look at what kind of oligonucleotide I have at the beginning. What can I use with it? Can I use the hydrophobic interactions? Then you can go in a certain route. Can I rely mainly on the ionic interactions? Then you can go in that route. And then go basically sort of see what techniques can give you the highest speed and efficiency, but also lead to the best purity and yields there.
Brilliant. Okay, so we mentioned obviously the webinar coming up. Now you've only touched on some of the things. So what other things will you be talking about in the webinar?
Yeah, so we'll focus on. We've had webinars before where we've talked about purification, but this time we'll focus on actually high loading purification. So really how to do this purification in high concentration and more efficiently. And this is what we call preparative scale purification. And we'll also discuss, as I mentioned, other methods to do this purification that can optimize the yield, as well as doing it with different oligonucleotides with different levels of complexities.
Right. Okay. Now, I know you guys do your own resins. So what makes the resins you have unique and different to what others are already out in the marketplace?
Yeah, so we mainly in this webinar also will focus on reverse phase chromatography, where we deal the way we do this purification is basically by using the hydrophobic entity that I've mentioned before on the oligonucleotide. I think the main advantage there is that you don't, once you produce your oligonucleotide, it already has that hydrophobic moiety on it. So in a sense, it's very simple to just take your product and go directly to purify it. You don't have to do any alterations there. And so I would say it's pretty straightforward. And also for some reasons that we'll discuss in the webinar, it's more, I guess, a clean separation between your impurities and your target product. That's another advantage for this reverse phase purification that we'll be discussing and that we have.
Brilliant. All right. Well, look, that's fantastic. So we've mentioned the webinar, but we haven't mentioned when it is. So when is the webinar, and what time and time zone is it in?
Yes. So the webinar is on September 14, next week, and it's at 10 a.m. Eastern time in the US. And I believe that's 4 p.m. Central time in Europe.
And 3 p.m. in the UK, yeah, sure.
Fantastic. 3
Fantastic.
p.m. in the UK, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so what we'll do is, viewers, if you'd like to learn more, because we've only just touched on this topic, as Hadi said, and there's loads more information out there. You can go and register for the webinar. It's completely free, and the link it will be above the video. But obviously, if people can't make it to the webinar for whatever reason, one, will it be available on demand? And you mentioned obviously other webinars you've done on this topic already, so where else can they get access to that information and any other information that DuPont Life Sciences and Specialties offer?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, all these webinars are on the website, the same place that you'll find this webinar eventually. You can also go to our LinkedIn page. That's also where we can share information about this webinar as well as other activities we're doing. And we also have an e-store if you'd like to actually check out like what kind of products you can try that we're talking about in this webinar. So, and I'm happy to share all these links as well.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll put all those links above the video, as I say. Well, Hadi, brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much for sharing all the information. Good luck with the webinar next week. I hope it goes very well. We have lots of people attending and lots of questions. One thing I should also add, viewers, is if you've got any questions based on what Hadi said today, or if you want to challenge him on what he said on anything today, feel free to put them in the comments below the video, because I'm sure he'll be only too happy to see them and to respond to them accordingly. All right, so Hadi, thank you very much. Enjoy the weekend. I hope the sun continues to shine then in Wilmington where you are, and hopefully shines here in the UK as well. And viewers, I hope it's sunny where you are as well. And until next time, as always, stay well and stay safe. Bye-bye.